Yeah,
It's just also any persons don't we see it
we
in,
don't have
in
the
Spanish class. There are many persons who absolutely don't understand it.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when we in Colombia, it's
No, but also in Spanish. I have any of my designer colleagues in Spanish, they speak Italian, French, they are multilingual, but not with English. And I think it's I like this because I think it's the only way to not be all the same thinking. And what sorry, and after I give you because we speak about language and medicine, I think the persons who are the most sensible of the language are the medical part, because the disparition of one language is the disparition of medical also. So, and they are very sensible of this, what mean the words, the grammatical, the way of thinking, in way of caring.
For me, it's very important that the person is at least a little part, if I'm not understanding too much, but the most of it, if I can follow, to speak in their own language, because I sense the person in their emotional and human language. So you really feel someone. Otherwise, which was really interesting, the Swiss way, for example, if it's getting emotional or very close to their teeth in 1 second. You don't have to say anything. Before they were talking very Swiss normally, and then in the moment, I was now observing it 7 years, and it is like that. Most of them in that situation where it's getting difficult and very emotionally, and for them unsafe. High German.
But this
in
is,
that moment,
this is
it's
very
really
basic.
interesting because it was for me in the cultural situation to be so like stringent, like really, it's not
you know the Swiss actualities in the radio also 50 years ago was High German for all the actuality. When we start to speak about the beautiful time was Swiss German. So inside of the emission of actualities you change. So when it has to be precise is High German, and when
But really, it's a really interesting situation. What I observed was everything which was emotionally and very close to the heart for them was switching to High German. And I had the feeling it was kind of protection, not to that if someone is not so, you could not, if someone is still staying in the Swiss, it's very much more the sensation, how.
But I think
feel also for empathy.
I think it's Swiss and non-Swiss, but it's also Protestants and Catholic. But even if you are not Swiss, it's a kind of socialization, and I think that it is a little bit more rational aspect of the Protestant makes that if it becomes serious, you have to be less emotional, to objectivize the thing, and there you are the rational human being instead of what is more ritual, what is more emotion, and the Catholic is more Roman culture, and this has completely different way of being legitimate to be in all emotions, and I think these are socializations. And what is very important, and for me very much related to what we have heard yesterday, is that there are a lot of different levels of information. It's the spoken word, it's the scientific word, it's the word of the person, but it's also the energetic level is a very important information for you, how you are practicing medicine. And this, if it's protected and hidden behind a language wall, it's difficult to have have access to this very important.
I won several wine bottles because I said, okay, and I always say really Swiss, okay.
Romansh.
And
Just change everything. I'm not sure Swiss and Romansh.
okay, yeah, but for example, when I was it was like their own language, yeah, and then I will say and then just the next second again I said okay, and then I made a joke. Okay, if it's not working out, maybe we have to bet. Yeah, we have one bottle wine, just as a joke. But it happened that I got the one or other bottle wine because it didn't work out. Although I was just mirroring, please stay in your language because it's for me a more deep from the sensation, and it's also better, and also for them to digest. But it was really interesting how deep the anchor is to change. Because although in that situation I was giving them the mirror, also that feedback, and not like saying we have to just please maybe because there's just more information within. Yeah? And the other one really understood and wanted to do that, but it was such a deep anchor. So that it takes maybe 2 or 3 times to meet up, that it was slowly working out when it's getting difficult to stay in the more close language.
But it's
Not to hide.
It's even in the repetition of the head. It's even switching from the emotional to the rational side, and it's interesting for the moments of knowledge and lost knowledge. I think you are expert in this. In the last moments, when you lose, in the last days of your life, you coming back to your mother language and mother tongue, and even if you have lived for example, mother and who finally just spoke the language when she was a child, the Romansh, and this was her home but she hadn't spoken a lot of years. She lived the whole life in French, and it's interesting how what is when we spoke yesterday about these factors of stabilization, which you were searching for, maybe also to cross borders, and I think in this moment, this is again, we would have normally had a neuroscientist who's working on the question. It's the daughter of Amado Silva, and she's working on the memory, especially part of the brain, and how you can stimulate and reactivate. And I think that it's interesting which role plays language, which role, for example, plays music, because it's another part of the brain which is activated.
Also the losing of language. My mother
that's I just spoke.
Was multilingual, and more and more she had problems. More and more she come back to Zorji, who was just a language for a short time in her life.
Interesting is also that they could play the music, but they have always, if they were a musician or they have played piano, that they maybe lose everything else and every else orientation. But sometimes if they get to grasp a piano somehow, they are just over the ability what they can perform in that moment. It's exceptional.
And it's actually also true, because yesterday we spoke about traumatization, and for me this is, we speak about non-knowledge, but for me it's also about this losing knowledge, for not losing it, but not having access anymore, and how to get back. And we know this under stress situations, like we know this in fragile situations, that some memories coming back and others you don't have access anymore. And for example, a colleague, filmmaker, worked with prisoners. And I know it from the work with traumatized people that often they can't speak about what they have lived, but they can sing. And it's really crazy. This film, the name will come back. Gabriel Perio. He made Jean Gabriel, and he made a film with prisoners and prisoners, adolescent prisoners, and by working with them, they started to rap, and they spoke about the nightmares and the daydreams, and it was really interesting that they could tell their stories via this rhythm again, and via the music. I think this is a very interesting factor. Are you using music in the context of diagnosis? I know we have a common friend, Maya, who's working with dancing, and the body tells the story of the.
I think we would be, if we are at a high field and also being very much in music areas, in orchestra, being raised with music, having been in the phenomenology of own sensation. And also I was having a look once to the rhythm pedagogy of which is also used in pain treatment and also for chronic disease to give relief. And Takidina is actually, like in Austrian, Vladishner is his name. It's not, he was making it so new, he was just importing, I don't want to make his work small, but he was just using the written speech, which is very traditional in India, all over India, and also in Africa. They are different. I'm not that musician knowing that details, having not searched about it, but I knew already since over 10 years there is also study work done with that, how to integrate in chronic pain situation, and in the moment of music, and Takidina is working with call response. It's kind of similar. Maya works in beginning with the names. It's also like a kind of call response in the rhythm in the feet, and in the Takidina there would be also clapping the hand, and then maybe call response on the same and you are answering, but also singing. And it's very interesting because this would be also responsibility. What means responsibility? Antworten, verantworten. I need to respond to life. And it's also in existence analytical, psychotherapeutic point of view. This is called PIA in German. It just means that you have to take the standing. In every question what life is giving to you, first you need to find the sensation, I'm not feeling fine, and okay, is it now my history, maybe of trauma or something, this is to reflect, but okay, I really don't feel right with this situation, but then I have to take a position. And if I'm able to have a meta perspective with that, and maybe being with a therapeut or a friend who's supporting your sense and your where you want to go, like a direction, then this can be uplifting. But not every person is able, honestly, to be in this directive way, that you get over your needs. That would mean, okay, I'm not driven by hunger, I'm not driven by all other needs, because I really want to, this is giving me sense in my life. So it's the most, this is to say, okay, I want to make this kind of congress, a meeting together, because this is opening my heart, and I want to bring people together, and although there are not too many people, but still I go for it. And it takes effort, and then question, why do I do it? But it gives a sense of being aligned with the inner sense of being productive. So also an artist would have it. And also in medicine, if you are having the more options to be active in healing, to integrate maybe not only a common line of medicine, which is giving you maybe a kind of autobahn, like a kind of barriers where you are in, which but in between to have really a relationship where you can work in and you are trained with this different kind. This makes it much more fulfilling. And so every kind of being productive, you are the hero in your life. This is that we are feeling sense, Sinnstiftung. But this would be the last in the psychoanalytic tradition of existence analytic. This is the fourth ground motivation of being, to develop the ability to create sense. But if someone is traumatized, he would be so much occupied by the surrounding of not being too much triggered of everything. So a surviving factor would be already to just be able to not follow every escapism situation. So that we are getting more self-reflective about this, that we all have family and we all have maybe a luggage to carry. If we integrate also in general field and shamanistic tradition or Asian tradition, then it's not a luggage only because of this field of the family where you were read in, and maybe there were it's not mistake, it's maybe nothing. Every person was doing the best out of their circumstances, but maybe you have had a closed-mindedness and you had to work in getting grown up, or you could feel, oh, I'm not free in that and that area, or I'm fearful. And if we integrate a very archaic perspective, oh, there's an old ancestor behind me. There's all the family row of my mother's side, and there's all the family row of like mother, father's side, okay, and then, okay, then it's getting very complex. But I think what we have to do these days would be, we have this archaic tradition, and we have a lot of individuation, and maybe to be able to integrate everything, because also in this there could be a very how it is in Haiti, for example. It's very mystical, not mystical, with voodoo, and everything is so much driven by it that the individual is not able to be a little bit like in a trauma, like being a little bit, oh, just in waking up, there was something at the wall, and I have to stay at home. Okay. So the mystical perspective is so much driven, and Haiti is really these days and everything really difficult, but most about it is about this perspective, which is so much into the culture. And so I think if we work with people who are, I get to realize it, who are very in this archaic tradition, for me, from the feeling, it's the earth element, like very.
It's the same time with the first country who make himself free. No?
Yeah.
So the colonial. So
it's really interesting, but somehow they are so much about this bad spirit. So it's really difficult to and I think what we have in this individualization, also integrating rational mind, also integrating a humanism, and that we don't have are so much driven by a small thing up in the edge somewhere, so we can also good seeing from a distance and going on. So I think this could be the great gift these days what we would have. But still, and also the integrating the sky perspective in, my inner hero being is maybe still the balloon, what was talked yesterday, or something what I have to develop in moments with being with myself, and that it's okay to listen to really deep talk of people who are maybe grounded in a hard tradition, and but we don't need to be so much driven and fearful from the other side if it's very on the a high field. But we can say, oh yes, if I want, I could do maybe also a ritual if I'm in a good place with that, or feeling that it's belonging to me, and I think. The interesting situation what we would have right now would how can we integrate that, being maybe these days a little bit also very individualized, but how can we integrate to make the circle back, to get in a devotion to earth, which would be this archaic people who work very much with shamanistic. Could be this devotional part, but not every one of them is behaving like this. But it can be to be, I'm just a part of Earth. I'm just belonging to it. And also the practitioner, like I would say Tibetan is sometimes, from my feeling, it's more in the meditation and more to this inner side, not too much to this, but it's just what is the first start where you, and so I think it would be interesting.
It's very important, I think. How can we deconstruct any own elements without going in new croyances,
faces, or
this is
beliefs.
This is really also for me why I think this is a question which is really interesting. How to do?
I think what you just described and this Haiti is an example. The connection with the archaic traditions is coming from our contemporary attitude, and often with very irrational logic. And we search there the anchor which we have lost. And then the part is taken and find in yoga practice and all this. It's finding the lost roots, inner connection, but it's not your inner connection. It's a simulation of this. And it's often over-stressed and you get lost in this. I would just give an example for a moment which I found was in the CEO, but it was very extreme because I was next to two very old men. Both never practiced meditation, things like that, very rooted to men, but very ill. And we all three were together in the room, and psychotherapist came and said, "Oh, you have your session, please." And I said, "I can't come, we sit there, so I can't move." I said, "Oh, maybe we do it here and we do it all together." And the young therapist with long hair, Brazilian origin, very tattooed. So for all his habitus, very the cliche of all what is now we will switch on another light and I laughed because I thought these two men wouldn't agree, and they said, "Oh yeah, why not? Never done." And then he started to describe, and the way he described very esoteric, I thought, "Oh, this will not function." And then one of the old men said, "Yeah, I know what you're talking. I'm agriculture, and I'm standing in front of my blade, my field, and I'm watching the field to understand where the wind is coming from and how the rain is coming and so on." So he understood completely what is meditation, even he never used this word. And then, "And you, my friend, tell your story." And he was a veterinarian and was not using modern forms of. So both were experts without even using the word, with having practices. And it was a session, 4-generational session, and I think we all have experienced these moments. It's just an example to say that sometimes, this is for me a problem of representation, we gave a form to these practices. And I think we all have a vocabulary of these forms of reconnect with this inner force. And I'm interested how we can help. This is the idea of this energetic fields to create, to be curious what are the forms of the others, various forms of connection. And one is doing sailing, the other is doing biking, the next one, and all these are forms of meditation and of getting to another spirit. And I think this convergence of this could be a strong energetic field, which can be very subversive. It's another form of subversion than to be on the barricades, even if I like to be on the barricades, but it's also a strong force, and it's used by others, by the manipulators. So I would say it's important to hack the system. This was I wanted to use this as an introduction, or for the designers, we start a workshop on thinking, on representation and sharing these different forms to medicar, to will.
No, we are happy that Sinus is going.
I really want the Sinus curve. Now, deine Sinuskurve.
Sinus code.
Yeah, good. We have to do that.
Yeah, but I'm happy to not do it today. I have to make a stage before.
40 years innovation, so it was okay if we can still protect it a little bit. Let it develop.
But I just what really interests me is this point you mentioned before, is how can we be open and be in questioning also if we feel that this could be interesting to energy, to something. How can we, as designer, because a representation is often affirmation. How can we bring without compare, because I think compare is also a kind of colonial situation to say I look everything from my point of view, and I analyze the world from my point of view. This is for me a past form. How can we enter in this element and say we have choice? This was a little bit what I tried, but I think was not enough complex to say, because it was dialectic, and I think dialectic is not interesting. How can we say in a moment there are possibilities, and the choice of the possibility is the context. This is what you said yesterday. Huh? But we present the possibilities, and the possibilities are going up with the time or with different, with process. You have different possibilities at the start. So we can make a kind of cartography, a spatial cartography of possibilities, and then comes the moment of choice. But is not make a hierarchy to say this will be the good solution, this will be the good solution. More say that these are solutions who from different cultures are confronted at this point of
It's similar like the picture of city. You also have points with borders, and the same idea to go different ways. You can find different ways, but you have to see the possibilities of all the things. But one thing I have to think about, because if the main idea is to get an individual healing, and I don't know if this is the correct idea to think about how I can heal individual. For example, you talk about the possibilities to be, if trauma, dimension are in communities. And they have the chance to live there and have the possibility without healing to find a place and stay in their life. And so could be better think how to heal the community, but not only individual. And so
that's for me one I write this night about this. No, it's a point who interests me really, is how can we go from this, what Remy say, from this I go inside of me, I have this energy at the same time.
No, but this is, I have to intervene there because I think this connection, and this is for all to deal with all these options. And we spoke yesterday, and a lot of intervention, we have this fragile moment. This is a chance, but because you have a very open mind, but you just said something very important. In the active traumatized situation, you need stabilization for to see the options. Because you are, if not, you are triggered. You are triggered all the time. And what says triggering is that the program is pursued without you have access to it. And that's something which is really very violent situation. So I think the action is both, and I agree completely. The question is not healing to have an optimal situation. Your body is always ill or it's always healthy. You can see it like that or like that. It just looks. It's a question of percentage, perhaps, maybe. So maybe you are 99% in good health. The thing is how you can have a stability to see the options. And I completely agree, if you are in an environment where this not has to be a healthy environment, but it has to be for yourself,
He noticed.
Could change. Could be.
You heard now? It's okay?
Hello?
Hello?
Colleague can give us a sign?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Hi, colleague. Hi, Gisela. Yeah, it was just, I think these things are, it's very interesting to say if I, for example, take care of a collective, I can heal the individual too. And I think it's not what we have heard yesterday in this connection with this inner source is not in a logic of egoistic, I'm taking care of myself. It's the myself in a collective.
I know.
I have
Can I
to
say something?
Yeah,
Also?
please.
Yeah. No, just because if not, it's like
take it.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
So there's a few things that I also wanted to say before. The first one, like relation with language too. I mean, it's a bit like doing. So I was thinking about like Anna Arendt when she says that like our language is our nation, and so I mean also relate in relation with the borders that we were talking about yesterday, and yeah, like what means the nation actually. So I'm always, I mean, if I would change something radically in my life, I would love to be bilingual, and because I really think that this makes a difference in terms of how you think. And also the other thing is that like I had to learn English. And I mean I like English actually, but I had to learn English. As I had to learn Spanish and I had to learn like Portuguese when I did that. So how much you are confronted with. It's a challenge, but it makes you change and you can always like expand yourself when you speak more languages, because I want to express myself properly, because at the beginning you feel stupid and you seem stupid actually, but you don't want to. I'm not in my language. I mean, I'm not in my language, so I need to. And it's a necessity that I think also, I mean, our generation is much more confronted with. I also have the feeling that there's kind of privilege when I say like, look, I mean, you know, and we have to, if we want to also like take a space in this world, basically. So, I mean, really fascinated about like, yeah, of course, like it's really important to speak your mother tongue, but the thing is that also we are really confronted to like improve and move and expand. And when I speak Italian, I always use like Spanish words or like English words. Sometimes German. I mean, my German is not so good, but like, and this makes you think in a different way, because the thing is that like you think that your mother tongue is the only. It's the same that like when I came out with "This is the water." This is the water, yeah, from by Davis Foster Wallace. It's your context, and you don't even know that's just a context. I mean, just because you were born with that context, it doesn't mean that's the only one. But it shaped us, and it shaped my way of thinking. I didn't decipher that, so it's like the first, like kind of, if you want to say it like that, like act of colonization. So I think it's really important to like go with this. So that means that puts ourselves it puts ourselves in a different condition of relativization. And then I was thinking about like
Not only a relativization, also
expansion, absolutely, but also yeah, I mean, it's not universal, it's not
productive
the absolute.
stabilization of what you think, that's your knowledge, or that's the truth, because you are relativizing
Yeah.
what you, or where you're coming from,
Exactly,
what you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the others are the same way. I mean, so, and then in relation with these, actually, I was thinking about representing energies. I do meditation and I do yoga since many years, and I went to a yoga retreat in August. And we did this circle. We were like 30, and we like did a circle, and we needed to take like our hands in this way, all of us connected. for half an hour, doing like a breathing session that was intense. And it was crazy because, I mean, all of us, I mean, we were all tingling at the end, like actually after 5 minutes, we're just tingling. Somebody was crying, like it was just like this, we shared so much the energies, and all, like, not all of us, but like we saw a lot this kind of golden circle. Like if nobody saw black, you know, I mean, just like there was this kind of light that was shared. I'm not mystic, I'm not even religious, but like I really have the feeling that was just like this energy. And so and this is really related, I think, with the representation. When you start to do meditation and you understand that you're just like something interconnected, your ego should really like be aside. And although if we are designers, no matter if, or teachers, it's like, I mean, how can I avoid to be so much present and to let also like things going on, also in terms of representations. And yeah, I mean, that was like what I wanted to say, basically, and to share, because I mean, it's something that I'm thinking like since many, I don't know, months, years, but now I think it's like.
You speak about this energy, but after I will give the example of yesterday night.
But I think that the point of the community, for example, I know many friends who go to yoga, and I only see the individual difference, the changing individual, as they have not so much problems with they are healthy, but individual. And in the group, I don't. And in the group, I know many people who make yoga, and I don't feel a difference in the group. It's not golden. It's the same problems every time. It doesn't go into a group.
It's not integrated in a collective change.
And so
yeah, but that's different. I mean, in yoga, I don't see any golden either. It's like,
yeah.
but this circle was something so powerful.
In the moment,
yeah.
in the moment.
But I
And
think
after they talk about problems with work and
yeah, no, that I think it's like, yeah.
I think that it may be about this, that it's exactly what often is the problem, the integration of the system which functions under a completely different logic and this experience. And it's sometimes you are different practices, I have to say also. And some is you are reinforced, but you are really reinforced in your cell, and this helps. But it's, as you said, it's not changing your attitude or your energetic transfer in the collective, for example. But there are people, they have a presence, and just by the type of presence, energetically there can be a transfer. But it's a dialogue process, and this is interesting. So sometimes you are in front of a person who has this. Also, you have to learn to open in a way that this transfer can happen. This was one thing, but I just yesterday I spoke a little bit that 20 years ago we founded, and it's interesting where in Dresden, where the first the great Paluca, I don't know those who know her potentially from dance. It was the first dancer in the beginning of the last century who started to make new forms of free, liberate dancing in the center, in a special place they built in Hellerau, which was thought as the European open center of dancing, and later
the time of modernity and
later the Bauhaus, but they were even a little bit before Bauhaus starting to experiment transdisciplinary, different formats, different different, it had the spirit and so on. And we started to work with dancers and with neuroscientists to trace the energetic flow, and a group of physicians could really mark in family constellations, in meditations, you could physically measure this energetic presence. But this crazy thing was that you had to put all this cable to measure. So the machine start to intervene in the situation, because you meditate when you have all these things, the heart is measured and so on. You have to train yourself to go over this, and we spoke about camera and all these things of intervention. That we, from one moment, we said we are more working on stabilizing the situation. But there is a colleague of us who is a neuroscientist, and she's called Tanya Singer, and she is working with the Dalai Lama on the role of meditation for the body and the mind spirit. Always with this way to transfer and represent. That's why I'm saying this to also the designers. Which language you use? We try to use the language of natural science to have the legitimacy to accept it with our source as a serious scientific proposal. And to prove for those who don't believe in what is happening, to convince them. And this gave a language which didn't correspond really. For me, you have the curves, you have all what you have said, but you lose an element which is crucial, this collective experience, or this, and we haven't had representations for this. I'm just saying.
If you are. I'm absolutely agree with this element, but I must say I walk a lot in a special energy place. So I chose my restaurant with energy. I chose, and yesterday when we was in this terrible, it's a place I cannot stay. That's energy. That's an energy. That's collective energy. That's a space. That's energy. Intra. And I feel this absolutely.
Yeah, but you feel it for you. Then there's an accommodation with others, but doesn't matter. You are right. And this is it's interesting because in the Greek philosophy, there's a name for it, and it was Aristoteles. It's interesting because it was Epicure who had the name for it, and it's for having the nose, metis. And he said metis is also like the renard, like the Fuchs, who knows the way. So it's a little bit, and it was associated with Odysseus, who they said has not always all the knowledge, but he had a good feeling and he was clever, and so and the word is metis. And it was Aristoteles with all the rational logic, with mathematics, who really fought against this culture of Epicure, and really erased even this word was banned, and you had to get out of it. And it's interesting that what you are speaking about is really, and we had this yesterday, is this nourished intuition, to feed your intuition by experience, by knowledge, but to have this part of the body and mind. You maybe explain it in different words and thoughts, but that's how I see it. The interesting thing, again, we have all our intuitions, and then this is accommodation. No, about the situation, you are right, but it's the accommodation of our all intuitions and all experience and knowledges. And this is the important thing. How can we do this It's transfers and accommodation.
But
That's
also,
maybe-
sorry to.
We are sorry, but we are
So
not-
genus locis. There are places, I think, where the energy,
Measure,
so
you can
very,
measure.
very more positive energy, negative energy, can circle or not circle. And as this is design, are we able to construct the genus loci?
Yeah.
Are we able to organize a bullshit room like this to make it to make that the energy, the collective energy can function? And the first we do when we enter the we bring the table together. There are something who is not really interesting,
Yeah,
but
it's more near.
it's the collective choreography and the relation of space for me are very important in this energy flowing or not energy flowing.
But I have the feeling that we are not building any genus loci. If we take up our ego, we're not doing anything like that because it's something that it belongs. That's why I think we are so much fascinated by cities. It doesn't really belong to any of us, like assigning a genus loci to something. Everything is a genus loci. Everything. The thing is that how we can read the genus loci of a place. That's my feeling. The underground has a genus loci.
So first I'm not agree with you.
No, but then we don't have. It's really like interesting to create. Like I'm not offended about that, but like
Well, the genus loci don't have. It's not a luxury hotel who has more genus loci.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely agree with you, but not every place has genus.
yeah, I don't know. I would like to stress this. I don't know. I don't have an answer. Just like I would like to stress this for myself. Just like, yeah. Maybe it's the first time that I think about it.
No, but I think it's perfect, and you both are right.
Yeah.
I think because and even on the again physical measurement, you can there's even how do you say an Einheit to measure high energetic places. It's I don't know, it's not decibel, but it's something like that. And for example, you have in the mountains, you have in Colombia, you have next to some indigenous places. It's a, do you know how this called this measurement? You know this? Yeah. I forgot.
I have a proposal related with this.
So you can measure, but it's the thing is that we have a kind of like we, and it's interesting that we are speaking here about it next to Michelangelo. The big question if there's a perfect measurement or is the perfect equilibrium or whatever, which is universal, which over generation is always detected. I'm just saying this question is
I'm not sure it's universal.
it's a very old question, but there are two approaches, and they are not far from each other, because one is, do I have the capacity to transform or to connect? And for me, it's what I'm saying about energetic urbanism or whatever. What are the resources and how to have access? And sometimes the resource is you have in Cologne, if you see, you have the dome, and then you have this beton and the end of the beton who's really problematic space, and you can't open it anymore. You have the war things, and it's like incredible space. But if you, for example, like you are working on this, you connect just with something a little bit farther. And then we are in the expansion we spoke about and so on. You can even interconnect things to transform collectively in one place to a place. And we did this a lot of times.
Und ich könnte das einmal
Ja.
einfach kurz zu Deutsch konkretisieren. Also in der Bahn, der wir gestern waren, habe ich über mehrere Dinge nachgedacht. Und ich habe zum Beispiel gesehen, dass ich bin öfter in so Städten, weil ich Filme drehe in irgendwelchen fremden Städten. Und dann komme ich in diese Situation, dass diese Restaurants da sind. Sieht fast immer gleich aus, ist fast immer der gleiche. Unheimlich oft läuft Fußball.
Situation of yesterday. So
The sports bar where they had this football.
Piace il pubblico con 15 televisioni.
C'era il Milan.
Sì,
Und ich wusste in dem Moment, dachte, das kann in Frankfurt sein, das kann überall sein. Und dann tauchten Prostituierte auf und ich habe darüber nachgedacht, also gut gecastete Gruppen von Prostituierten tauchten auf.
Prostituzione e il salone della mode. Non fa confusione.
Für die Männer, die gerade im Modebusiness sind. Und ich war fasziniert, dass das in jeder Stadt gleich ist. Also dass es an diesen Ecken immer wieder auftaucht. Also das fand ich interessant. Ich fand interessant die Geschichte mit dem Sinusknoten, also als du darüber sprachst, mit dem Sinusknoten, wo ich dachte, das könnte jetzt ein Punkt sein, wo wir gemeinsam darüber sprechen. Also ich finde, dass dieser Ort ganz viele Möglichkeiten gehabt hat, wenn ich die Kellner gesehen habe, die aufs Fußballfeld guckten und sich unwohl fühlten. Und gerne ein Fußballstar wären. Also der Traum wäre
Speranza di essere un
Also wir haben ganz viele dieser kleinen Punkte gehabt, wie man die Stadt beschreibt, Möglichkeiten, wo wir hätten gemeinsam einen Rhythmus finden können als Gruppe. Wir haben aber diesen Rhythmus nicht gefunden. Wir haben nicht es geschafft, miteinander so zu kommunizieren, dass wir es gemeinsam erleben, diesen Ort.
This is this geschafft. Yeah, it on the Italian now.
Non posso trovare il momento o l'energia collettiva di essere in una costruzione a questo momento.
But what we see here, the intuitive perception, energetic perception, maybe with some other components being tired of this day to coordinate, to do all this, and to find a perfect space where all the senses can relax. You come in as a filmmaker and you see the inscenation, which often you see too, but the role was a different one. Huh? The role was the body, and you felt the body and you wanted to, your role was, it's another capacity. And if we all would have taken this moment, in this moment, then we would have seen the scene differently. Because, as you said, you have this, but it's a social ecosystem, which can be interesting, but sometimes you are just exhausted and you just need a space where you can reinforce your energy. With this construction or your observation, you also can reinforce energy, but it's a way to see the situation interrelational, and then you come to them. And I think this is a perfect example. The only thing I don't agree, maybe the collective has different forms. Sometimes we see the golden circle, and sometimes the one sees yellow, the other red, and the next green, and this can be good too. If everyone profits from itself, from the situation, we still can have a collective benefit, which is not a collective, coordinated experience, which is the aim which we maybe have here, if we're not too much monopolizing the discourse.
Je speak a lot for.
You know, we have this culture, but in this moment it's a little bit too much.
I give my time. You can use my time.
No. I want to hear Sylvia. Because Sylvia, meanwhile, we all sit there and had a drink, was closed in a train, and
3 hours.
3 hours.
3 ore.
Because we haven't booked a correct place to sleep for her. Just to say
No, avevamo un
Hours.
how many scenarios can happen.
To be free,
Non ho capito.
yesterday, I come back to
Puoi dire anche in italiano? Ok.
for to see my family for 1 night and to live with them. And one person in Milan si
Parli in italiano?
Italiano.
Killing himself.
Sì,
Sul treno? No,
sul treno.
Cioè, nel senso.
Sono tutti i giorni.
Tutti i giorni, guarda, io faccio pendolare con Firenze.
Sono in Francia, a Parigi sono